Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Endless Party.
Yeah, we're excited you're here.
We are. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that we are in matching shirts today, and I want to give a shout out to my mom for making us these.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nicole Guyman Babcock. We love these shirts.
I forget her middle name's Guyman.
Maiden, yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't that her middle name too?
Oh, yeah, she changed it.
Yeah.
Anyways, Nicole
We went
Guyman
to a
Babcock.
family reunion and had a great time. So
Yes.
we appreciate it.
Okay, so Elijah has a blog.
Mm-hmm.
It's called
Just my name.
his name.
ElijahArmstrong.com.
If you want to look it up, it's called ElijahArmstrong.com. And on this blog, he posts weekly newsletters. And he has 3
So I
topics.
have basically 3 things that I look for each week.
Yes.
Something that inspired me, something that moved me, and something that improved me.
And I am one of his loyal followers.
Obviously, because she's my wife.
Yes, I read his blog every week. It's really good. You should. And I really appreciated an episode.
Blog I posted
a blog
about 2 weeks
post
ago.
he wrote 2 weeks ago, and it was all about the concept of failure. And failure is something that Elijah and I have been discussing, I would say, this whole year. And the reason being is I think in the pursuit of success,
The topic of failure always comes
it
up.
always comes up. And so as we've sought to understand what success looks like in our lives, we've also defined what failure looks like for us.
Yeah.
Because once you understand failure, you can learn how to avoid it, and then you can achieve success.
Mm-hmm.
So today's episode is going to be all about our understanding of failure. And all the credit really goes to Elijah because he wrote this on his blog. And
I
very
wouldn't
nice.
say all the credit goes to me.
Most of the credit.
I would say a lot of credit goes to other people's resources that I just drew from.
He drew from resources, and then I drew from him drawing from the resources, and that's how we're here today.
That's how we're here today.
Okay, so let's jump in.
Okay. So our understanding of faith, as Meg mentioned, we've really just redefined because we kind of started to ask ourselves, what does it mean to fail? What makes somebody a failure? And so I started to think back and really just question my entire understanding of what failure is. And for example, I'm going to use more sports analogies here.
We love sports analogies.
I lost way more races than I ever won in track and field and in cross country, but I don't believe that my career was a failure. In
Right.
fact, I view my career as a major success because of the person that I became along the way, right? I learned so much more from my quote-unquote failures than I ever did from my successes and triumphs. And I guess to put this into a more frame of life, I don't think anybody listening to this podcast, or me and Meg in general, would ever view a marriage as a failure if the people continue to work on it every day, even though it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that their relationship is suffering, they choose every single day to work on themselves and work on their relationship. And in fact, I would view that marriage as a major success. And so what really is a failure in this life? And that's the question that I was really asking myself, and the question me and Meg have been asking ourselves. And I came to this conclusion that there's only one way to fail in life. Would you like to say what that is?
What? You're going to give me the honor?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a big deal. You can only fail if you quit.
Yeah. And so the phrase that I actually drew from was this Alex, I don't know how to say his last name.
Hermosi.
Hermosi. It's spelled Hermozi.
Mm-hmm.
So Alex Hermosi, and he said, I cannot lose if I do not quit. But I changed it to I cannot fail if I do not quit. And I think that's really the premise of failure. The only way that you can fail in this life is if you give up, is if you quit, is if you throw in the towel. Because in any other aspect, you can't fail. Like if you continue to give your best every single day, you're never going to be a failure. Even if you never achieve your goal, it doesn't matter so long as you are striving to achieve it.
I love that understanding because it puts the ball in your court. Failure is then a choice, according to Elijah and I. You can choose to fail. You can choose to quit, where I feel like our universe and society just makes it out that failure is something that just happens to you.
Right.
Oh, you'll just fail.
Or that you just are.
or that you just are, but that's not true.
Yeah.
We believe that you can choose to either be a failure and a success.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two stories I want to share. They're well-known people, and they're people who at one point in their life probably could be deemed as a failure by society, but to themselves they weren't, because
they were never failures.
No, they chose to persist. So the first well-known person is actually J.K. Rowling.
Mm-hmm.
How much is she worth, Elijah?
She's worth over $1 billion now.
If you don't know who that is, she is the author of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
How many copies has it sold? How many reprints?
I have no idea.
She's probably one of the most successful authors in the
She's
world.
the second highest paid author in the entire world.
Who's the first?
I don't remember her name, but I looked it up a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
Unless she surpassed her.
I
She
don't know.
could have.
She's really big. Anyways, so J.K. Rowling had just gotten a divorce. She was on government aid, and she could barely afford to feed her baby in 1994. This was just 3 years before the first Harry Potter book was published. When she was working it out, she was so poor she couldn't even afford a computer or the cost of photocopying the 90,000-word novel. So she manually typed out each version to send to the publishers. So she's typing out this 90,000-word manuscript.
She typed it out a handful of times.
Herself, because she couldn't afford to copy it. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Anyways, so she types it out, sends it to the publishers. It was rejected dozens of times until finally Bloomsbury, a small London publisher, gave it a second chance after the CEO's 8-year-old daughter fell in love with it. And thank goodness she chose to persevere after the first couple times she was rejected, because I'm speaking for myself, but I love that series. It's so good.
Series.
Okay, the next story we're going to share right now, too, is all about fried chicken. Elijah and I love a good old fried chicken.
Mm-hmm.
KFC.
I love KFC.
Okay, I'm going to be real. KFC kind of makes me sick when I do, but I do like fried chicken. So, Colonel Harlan Sanders was fired from a variety of jobs throughout his career before he first started cooking chicken in his roadside Shell service station in 1930, when he was 40 years old during the Great Depression. His gas station didn't actually have a restaurant, so he served diners in his attached personal living quarters. Over the next 10 years, he perfected his secret recipe and pressure frying cooking method for his famous fried chicken, and then he moved on to bigger locations. His chicken was even praised in the media by food critic Duncan Hines. However, as the interstate came through Kentucky, and in the town where his restaurant was located, it took away important road traffic, and the colonel was forced to close his business and retire, essentially broke. Worried about how he was going to survive off of his meager $105 monthly pension check, he set out to find restaurants who would franchise his secret recipe. He wanted a nickel for each piece of chicken sold. He drove around, sleeping in his car, and was rejected more than 1,000 times before finally finding his first partner.
And now KFC's all over the world.
And now Kentucky Fried Chicken's in Idaho because of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's actually pretty profound, because this understanding that you cannot fail if you do not quit has proven itself over and over and over. And I've seen it in everything that I've researched, everything that I've studied. And it's just amazing to me. So the statistic is, I think 80% of all business startups fail. And of those 80%, 50% in the next 5 years fail. And in all reality, the only reason that 80% fail, and then of those 80, 50 fail, is because they gave up. They quit. It got hard. They ended up just giving up on their dream, giving up on their business. And it was kind of cool. As soon as as we were doing this podcast, I just asked my dad the other day about how he started his business. So my dad was a teacher. His passion was coaching, but he knew that if he was teaching, he'd be able to coach. And so he fell in love with both teaching and coaching. And so that was his profession. And he realized that in order for him to live the lifestyle that he wanted, a teacher's salary wasn't going to cut it, especially because him and my mom had 7 kids together. No chance. And so when he got his first paycheck, he was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And so he started a landscaping business. And he just told me this, I think, a week ago.
Yeah, it was just on Sunday.
And he just told me, he was like, my business, I didn't see hardly anything in the first 3 years of my business. He's like, it helped. I made a couple $100 here and there. And he's like, don't get me wrong, it definitely helped, especially with all the kids at home. He's like, but my 4th year, I started to see a lot better. And then my 5th year, he's like, my business was a success. And now he's been running that company successfully for over 35 years. And it's pretty profound because it was that 5-year rule. Like if they persisted, if they just kept at it for 5 years, they would have seen the success that they desired. And Jordan Peterson, this guy's
we love JP.
JP is a legend. So he actually has the principle of the 5-year rule. And what he says, you can have everything you want in life so long as you work for it, and you can have it within 5 years.
But it might
take 5 years.
And it's going to be every day of you working on it.
Yeah. And it's cool to see because I've seen that in my own life. My dad is an example of it. I would even say your dad is an example of it. Even though he was a dentist, like he bought into a practice and then saw the success that he wanted in 5 years.
Yes.
And it's just amazing to me because if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, especially in this life, 5 years isn't that long. No, it's actually very, very minimal. You can have everything you want in your life so long as you work for it every day for 5 years.
So amazing.
That's it. 5 years.
Can't we all I think we were talking about something else the other day where it's like, okay, you can either sacrifice for your 90-year life or you can sacrifice really hard for 5 years and then have
everything you want.
For the rest of your life. So which would you rather prefer? Would you rather prefer be like sacrificing what you really want to do for 90 years or work on it for 5 as hard as you can?
Well, there's a quote that it reads, if you don't sacrifice for what you want becomes the sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. I've seen it. I mean, we all have.
Mm-hmm.
You begin to sacrifice your own dreams and your own passions for the safe route. And we'll get into that a little more. But I think this principle right at first is that you cannot fail if you do not quit is vital for everybody to realize what it means to be successful and go on to achieve their success.
Beautiful.
You just have to keep going.
Just keep going. And I hope we can inspire you today. Whatever is in the back of your mind that you know you should be working on, that you want to be working on, start.
Yeah.
Keep going today.
Yeah.
This is the perfect segue into the next principle of failure. And it is, you can fail at something you don't even want to do.
Let that sink in for a second.
You can fail at something you don't even want to do.
Yeah. And it's pretty cool. So actually, we're going to share a couple stories. One is of Jim Carrey and just his childhood and his father. And then Meg is going to go in depth on him as a person and what he was able to accomplish and just kind of the difference between the two. And this story actually comes from Jim Carrey, and that's where I got this principle from, is you can fail at something you don't even want to do. And it was pretty interesting because he talked about how his father could have been a phenomenal comedian. And that's why Jim Carrey himself was a phenomenal comedian. He had his dad as an example. And what was crazy is that his dad chose the safe route. But then 10 years in, his dad got laid off from his job, and the safe route went completely bankrupt. And it was insane because that's when Jim Carrey said, I found out that you could fail at something you don't even want to do. And then he says, so why not take the risk and really just bet on yourself and pursue what it is that you want to do? Because at the end of the day, there is no such thing as a safe route. And I came to this conclusion that if you put your future into somebody else's hands, that also means that you put your success into somebody else's hands. And in turn, your failure. And it's up to somebody else to dictate whether or not you are a success or a failure. And I'm never going to put that into somebody else's hands.
Why would you want someone to have that power?
Nobody should.
No.
And that's what so many people do each and every day, is they put their success or failure into the hands and into the power of somebody else. I mean, all these major corporations that people work for that go bankrupt on a regular basis, that lay off thousands, hundreds of thousands of people every single year. And it was because they chose the safe route. And they failed at something they didn't even want to do in the first place. And that's crazy. Like, it's insane to me. Like, the last thing I would, and don't get me wrong, if anybody's out there that's an accountant or a mathematician.
And you really love it.
And you really love it, go after it. Pursue what you love. But I would never want to do that. because that's not what my passion is. That's not what drives me. And here's what's insane is I could have gone to school and became an accountant and then ultimately failed, even though I didn't want to do it in the first place.
So if you have the risk of quote unquote failing, why don't you risk it failing at something you love instead of risk failing at something you don't love?
Exactly. If you're going, like, life itself is a risk. Like, I don't know if any of you know this, but we're not going to get out of it alive. Everybody's going to die at the end of the day. And because of that, why not take the risk and believe in yourself and bet on yourself and pursue what it is that you love?
Makes sense to me.
It makes perfect sense to me. And so Meg's actually going to go in depth on what Jim Carrey's story was, because he was able to recognize in his dad that his dad failed at something he didn't even want to do. And that's what made him pursue comedy as a career.
So when Jim Carrey was 14 years old, his father lost his job and his family hit really hard times. They moved into a Volkswagen van and lived on a relative's lawn. And the young aspiring comedian, who was so dedicated to his craft, mailed in his resume to the Carol Burnett show at age 10. Then,
that's gutsy, man.
I know.
What a stud.
Then he took an 8-hour-per-day factory job after school to help make ends meet at 10 years old. At age 15, Carrey performed his comedy routine on stage for the first time in a suit his mom made him and totally bombed, but he was undeterred. The next year, at 16, he quit school to focus on comedy full-time. He moved to LA shortly after, where he would park on Mulholland Drive every night and visualize his success. One of these nights, he wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, which he dated for Thanksgiving of 1995. Just before that date, he hit his payday with Dumb and Dumber. He put the deteriorated check, which he'd kept in his wallet the whole time, in his father's casket.
Incredible. I mean, there's so much in that story that anybody seeking success could draw from. The fact that he visualized it, that he believed in it, that he didn't let a quote-unquote failure deter him. Mm-hmm. And that's another example, is like, you cannot fail if you do not quit. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a prime example. 10 years old. I think 10 years old he sent in his resume?
10 years old.
Yeah, and then he got a job.
Then he got a factory job.
Helping his family.
14 he performed.
Bombed. And then he went on to 16, dropped out of school.
And then he
pursued comedy, and then he landed Dumb and Dumber, which is such a funny movie.
It's hilarious.
It's so good. Anyways, I just find it amazing that these quote-unquote heroes in our lives aren't any different than us. They're exactly the same. The only difference is they believed that there was no such thing as failure so long as they persisted. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I find that so just like... What's
it's
the word?
Inspiring to me.
Inspiring, but there's another word that's like motivating. Like it instills in a desire into myself to be like, yeah, like I can do this so long as I don't give up, so long as I continue to persist.
Yes.
It's amazing. So, one, don't go the safe route, because at the end of the day, you can fail at something you don't even want to do, because you put your future in the hands of somebody else.
Okay, the next and final principle. This is an Elijah Armstrong original.
This is an Elijah Armstrong original.
And it is the phrase, no one has failed tomorrow.
Yeah. So, actually, this one I drew from recently, me and Meg. So, let me preface this real quick. Nobody talks about how much you're going to miss your spouse when you have kids. And the reason being is because you dedicate your entire life to your family and their well-being and their livelihood, which is a great thing, and it's a valuable thing, and you should take that responsibility. But before that, me and Meg had 3 years. No, not 3 years. 2.5?
2.5, yeah.
We had 2.5 years where all we did was just party and be best friends with each other. We had the opportunity to be on the same track team at college, and then all we did was study together and study because it was during COVID. And so legit, we just were each other's best friends all day, every day. And it was wonderful. But then all of a sudden we had these babies, and they're incredible and we love them to death. But all of a sudden your spouse gets pushed to the wayside because you have work, you have kids, you have all the mundane things of life that you have to do.
Yeah, and I want to say, and the only reason being is like our babies have more obvious and more needs than like me.
Right. Like at the end of the day,
I'm not crying on the floor.
Meg can feed herself. Winnie B can't.
Yes.
Right. And so I realized that we needed to make sure we were taking at least one day a week to spend time with each other. And luckily we had friends. They just moved. Sad day.
No,
that's another story.
so sad.
But we were able to just pass over a baby monitor, and our babies would be put to bed, and then we could go out for about 1 to 2 hours, and then we'd switch off with them the next day. And so we would have a date night each week. And for us, it was every Tuesday. And the first Tuesday we go out, it is like awkward.
I didn't even know what to do.
And weird, and like it wasn't even the same as when we were courting each other when we first started dating, because like MJ, not MJ, yeah, MJ, rest in peace, you know. But I was like this smooth criminal. I was like a ladies' man. I just felt like I had this like suave, like all the things, right? And so I could like woo Meg. At least so I thought. I mean, we're married now, so I guess it worked. But then all of a sudden I'm just this awkward weirdo that like can't even hold her hand properly. And I honestly felt like the entire date was a failure after we got home. And I just felt bad. I felt like this loser of a husband. And then that's when this idea came to my mind, is that no one has failed tomorrow. And of course, yeah, maybe the date wasn't a very successful date, but at the end of the day, I can have a successful marriage so long as I persist. And I can have a successful relationship with my wife so long as I don't give up on a relationship. Yeah, so what? You had one flop of a date. That doesn't mean the next one needs to be a flop, or your entire marriage needs to be a flop. Like, as long as you continue to work at it every single day, you will be a success. But I also want to make sure that each and every person knows out there that even if you failed today, it doesn't mean that you're going to fail tomorrow. And that's why you have to continue to push forward every single day and never give up on whatever it is that you're pursuing.
I think that's so beautiful. And I think not only in a relationship, I think this can apply in parenting, and especially in relationships.
Yeah.
I think this can apply even in business. So what? You had a bad day today, but tomorrow can be better.
Yeah.
So no one has failed tomorrow.
And there's a couple things I want to just add at the end of this podcast. One, Zig Ziglar has a quote that it says, "Failure is an event. It's not a person. Yesterday did end last night, and tomorrow doesn't begin until tomorrow." Mm-hmm. And so it's just this understanding that you need to live in the present moment and understand that you might have made a mistake. You might have quote unquote failed, but you can continue to be better and strive for better and improvement each and every day. And then the other thing I wanted to add too is make reference back to Colonel Sanders. He was 40
when he started.
Yeah. And then I think he was pretty old. I think he was like in his 60s or 70s.
Yes.
When KFC started to take off. And that's that it's never too late to start. Like, it's never too late to start on your dreams. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how many times you failed. Like, you got to continue to strive at it no matter what your age. I mean, Noah was 900 years old before he built the ark. So I think you got some time. And don't get me wrong, I don't think you're going to live till 900, but just continue to work at it every day.
I think we're going to end with this last inspiring story. It's about Stephen King. So, Stephen King was broke and struggling when he was first trying to write. He lived in a trailer with his wife, also a writer, and they both worked multiple jobs to support their family while pursuing their craft. They were so poor they had to borrow clothes for their wedding and had gotten rid of the telephone because it was too expensive. King received so many rejection letters for his works that he developed a system for collecting them. In his book on writing, he recalls, "By the time I was 14, the nail in my wall would no longer support the weight of rejection slips impaled upon it. I replaced the nail with a spike and kept on writing." He received 60 rejections before selling his first short story, The Glass Floor, for $35. Even his now best-selling book, Carrie, wasn't a hit at first. After dozens of rejections, he finally sold it for a meager advance to Doubleday Publishing, where the hardback sold only 13,000 copies. Not great. Soon after, though, Signet Books signed on for the paperback rights for $400,000, $200,000, of which went to King. Success achieved.
Now he's worth over $500 million.
Yes. He literally had a spike in his room with hundreds of rejection papers.
Yeah. And it just goes back to this, like, you cannot fail if you do not quit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's amazing how our definition of failure has completely been redefined over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool is that it can be redefined for each and every one of you, too.
Yes.
It doesn't just have to be a Meg and Elijah thing or the endless party thing. And so many people have already redefined what failure is. Jim Carrey, Colonel Sanders, Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, all of these individuals that we know as heroes in their industries became heroes because they persisted.
Yes. So to end, let's just reiterate the 3 principles we shared today. Number 1, you cannot fail if you do not quit. Number 2, remember that you can fail at something you don't even want to do. And number 3, no one has failed tomorrow.
Yep. So
keep your chins up, keep your head held high, and we hope that you keep persisting.
Absolutely. No one has failed tomorrow. All right, guys. Until next time, keep at it.
Yes.
Keep working. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for being here. We hope you comment, subscribe, whatever the platform tells you to do.
Yeah. Also, we've mentioned this a million times, but we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
We want to know if there's a topic that you would like us to discuss, if there's something that you've been struggling with or that you would like more information on, because we're avid readers.
Yeah.
We love to do research. We love to figure out what it is that people are engaged in and how we can help them.
So until next time, we will catch you later.
Okay.
Peace.